My husband Sean and I have 2 daughters. We don't have any sons. Now, you probably don't have any reason to doubt that statement, but about 12 years ago, you might have heard a rumor that made you wonder about these facts. Oh, it was a juicy rumor, all right, and depending on who you heard the story from, it would have been different. Sean had been married before, one version of the rumor went, and he had a secret child that he didn't want anyone to know about. Or either Sean or I had an affair. The details varied, but that affair produced a child, a son. This secret son lived with family back in Canada so that no one would find out about him. The salacious rumors spread quickly, just as rumors and gossip usually do. When I heard the stories, I was stunned. And then I laughed. And then I tried to piece together where the rumor could have started. With a little detective work, I figured out the cause of these stories. Rumors and gossip. Have you been their victim too? The problem of gossip isn't a new one. Our human natures, unfortunately in this case, are wired to love a good story. Shutting down the gossip mill and standing alone as a voice of reason, that can take real courage. Gossip has ruined families, careers, and lives. Stopping it in its tracks isn't easy, but it's the right thing to do. Gossip threatened the life of the first king of Israel, Saul, and the future King David. The 2 men had a complicated relationship. After David slayed Goliath, he was greatly favored by Saul. David lived in the palace, and Saul became sort of a mentor and a father figure to him. This relationship changed for a number of reasons, but in essence, Saul became jealous of David. Saul's reign wasn't going quite as planned, and many murmured about finding a new leader, a new king. David looked like a good candidate. Men polarized their allegiances around either Saul or David, and they chased each other through the wilderness and from stronghold to stronghold. And yes, rumors fueled the anger on both sides. Saul received word on the whereabouts of David and his men. They were in the wilderness of En-Gedi. Saul gathered 3,000 of his men and set out to find David and his men. As Saul and his army approached, David and his smaller group of men hid themselves in the recesses of a cave. Their hearts must have beat wildly when the form of a man darkened the entrance to their cave. Saul had found them. But to their surprise, the king was unaware that this cave was their hiding place. Saul was looking for what he thought was a private place to relieve himself. Well, this, David's men argued, was David's chance to be rid of Saul. The Lord had told David that he would deliver his enemy into his hand. This must be that moment, they whispered. David creeped up behind the king. Taking his weapon, he cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Unheard, he retreated to the recesses of the cave. Almost immediately, he regretted his action. The king of Israel, after all, was the Lord's anointed. David subdued his men, and he prevented them from overtaking and killing Saul. The king left the cave none the wiser. But that's not where the encounter ended. Let's read about it in 1 Samuel chapter 24, beginning in verse 9. Here's what it says. David also arose afterward, went out of the cave, and called out to Saul, saying, "My lord the king." And when Saul looked behind him, David stooped with his face to the earth and bowed down. And David said to Saul, "Why do you listen to the words of men who say, 'Indeed, David seeks your harm'? Look, this day your eyes have seen that the Lord delivered you today into my hand in the cave, and someone urged me to kill you. But my eye spared you, and I said, I will not stretch out my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. Moreover, my father, see the corner of your robe in my hand. For in that I cut off the corner of your robe, and did not kill you. Know and see that there is neither evil nor rebellion in my hand, and I have not sinned against you. Yet you hunt my life to take it." So it was, when David had finished speaking these words to Saul, that Saul said, "Is this your voice, my son David?" And Saul lifted up his voice and wept. And he said to David, "You are more righteous than I, for you have rewarded me with good, whereas I have rewarded you with evil." David's actions were brave. He stooped before the king and he called out the rumors and the gossip that were swirling around about him. David spoke the truth, and Saul responded with compassion. Now, this wasn't the end of the two men's story. Their challenges continued, but it is a snapshot for us, a vivid example of the polarization, hate, and destruction that rumors can cause. And here's the hopeful part, the compassion and transparency that can follow when rumors are stopped, when the lies are called out for what they are. Well, that rumor about our secret son, it had an innocent beginning. Our daughters were virtually adopted as grandkids by our friend and coworker Mary and her husband Jerry. Our girls adored spending time with Grandma Mary and Papa Jerry, and with Mary's grandson, Seth. Seth became like an older brother to them, so much so that they naturally talked about their brother at school to their teachers and to their friends. These innocent conversations turned into juicy tidbits and a full-blown rumor. Well, thankfully, I can laugh about that situation now. No real harm was done. We told the girls to start explaining who Seth was when they talked about him. And the truth squelched the rumors. Truth triumphed.